It was a Tuesday morning at Cedar Hill Elementary. The sun was shining through the windows, filling the classroom with a warm golden light. Birds could be heard outside, chirping like they were singing just for the children. Inside room 204, desks were set in neat rows. Backpacks hung on the chairs, and pencils rolled quietly on tabletops as students got ready for a special activity. Mrs. Bellamy stood in front of the class. She wore a big necklace that clinked every time she moved. Her hair was pulled back tightly, and her glasses sat low on her nose. She clapped her hands to get the class's attention. "Okay, everyone," she said with a wide smile. "Today is our family day share. Each of you will stand up and tell us something special about your family. Maybe what your mom or dad does for work. Maybe something fun you all do together. This is your chance to let us know who you are." The students looked excited. Some whispered to each other. Others straightened up in their seats, ready to talk. A few looked nervous, like they weren't sure what to say. Malik sat quietly near the back. His hands were folded in his lap. His eyes looked at the floor, but his mind was somewhere else. One by one, the students went up to the front of the class. Mia said her mom was a doctor who worked at the hospital and helped babies. Brandon said his dad drove big trucks and sometimes let him sit in the front seat. Lily shared that her family owned a bakery and always brought home extra cupcakes. The class clapped politely after each person. Some kids nodded along. Mrs. Bellamy would write a small note on her paper after each talk, saying things like, "Great job," or "Speak louder next time." Then, Mrs. Bellamy looked at her list and called, "Malik, your turn." The room got quiet. Malik stood up slowly. He walked to the front with small steps, his shoes making soft sounds on the floor. He didn't smile. He didn't look around. He stood still, like a tree standing against the wind. "My dad is the president," Malik said, loud enough for everyone to hear. First, nobody spoke. The room was silent for 2 seconds. Then laughter broke out. A boy near the window shouted, "Of what?" "The video game club." A girl giggled and covered her mouth, pretending to be surprised. Another kid leaned over and whispered something that made the student next to him laugh even harder. Mrs. Bellamy didn't laugh out loud, but her lips curled into a small smile. She raised one eyebrow and looked down at her paper. Then she looked up and said, "Now Malik, let's be serious, okay? This is a time to tell the truth. Not a time for jokes or stories." Malik stood still. His hands were at his sides. His face didn't change. He looked straight ahead and repeated, "My dad is the president." Mrs. Bellamy sighed loudly, like she was tired. "That's enough, Malik. You can sit down now." Malik didn't argue. He walked back to his seat the same way he had walked up, slow, quiet, calm. The other kids kept giggling. One even whispered, "Mr. President," and gave a fake salute as he passed by. Malik sat down and stared at his desk. His fingers touched the edges of a notebook, but he didn't open it. He didn't draw, didn't write, didn't fidget. He just sat still as stone. From across the room, a girl recorded a short video on her tablet. She had caught the moment when Malik said, "My dad is the president," and the class laughed. She didn't mean to be mean. She just thought it was something funny to post. She sent it to her friends, who sent it to theirs. By lunchtime, the video had left the classroom and started spreading across phones and computers in the school, and soon beyond. Malik didn't eat much lunch. He picked at the edges of his sandwich and didn't touch his applesauce. When other kids pointed and whispered, he didn't say anything. He didn't even look up. That night, the video reached people outside the school. Some laughed, some got angry. A few people didn't know what to think. But one person who saw it stopped what they were doing. They watched the clip again, then once more. They didn't laugh. They didn't look away. They picked up a phone and made a call. And while Malik slept that night, his head resting gently on a pillow, a black car drove past his house and parked quietly near the corner. The engine stayed running, but the lights were off. Malik's words had not been a joke. They were not pretend. But no one had believed him. Not yet. The next morning started like most others at Cedar Hill Elementary. The flag was raised in front of the school while sleepy children climbed down from yellow buses. Backpacks bounced on their backs as they walked up the steps. Birds fluttered by the playground. Teachers stood at the doors with coffee cups in hand. But something felt different. There was a strange kind of energy in the air. It was like the whole school was holding a secret that everyone knew but nobody wanted to say out loud. By the time Malik reached the front gate, a few students had already gathered near the entrance. They looked at him, then at each other, then back at him again. One boy whispered something into his friend's ear. They both laughed, then quickly looked away when Malik passed. Malik did not speak. He walked to his classroom like always, with quiet steps and his head held high. But inside, something was heavy in his chest, the same way the sky feels before a thunderstorm. You cannot see the storm yet, but you know it is coming. He took his seat in the back of the classroom. Mrs. Bellamy walked in a few minutes later. She placed her bag on the desk and sipped her coffee, pretending everything was normal. But even she felt the change. She noticed how the students looked at her and then looked at Malik. She saw how nobody talked loudly like before. It was as if the room was filled with invisible words nobody wanted to say out loud. By lunch, the whispers had spread from room 204 to almost every hallway in the school. Students crowded around phones, showing each other the video. It was the same short clip. Malik standing tall at the front of the class. His voice saying clearly, "My dad is the president." Then laughter. Then Mrs. Bellamy's smirk. Then Malik walking away without a word. Some students laughed when they saw it. Others did not. A few kids watched it more than once, and each time they felt a little colder inside. Something about the way Malik kept his face still. Something about how the room had turned against him. It didn't feel so funny anymore. At recess, Malik sat alone on a bench near the edge of the playground. A soccer ball rolled near his feet, but he did not kick it back. He just stared at the clouds, letting the wind brush past him. A girl from his class came up to him and said, "You really think your dad's the president?" Her voice was not angry, but it was not kind either. It was the kind of voice people use when they already think they know the answer. Malik nodded once. That was all. She walked away, confused. She had expected him to laugh or get mad or maybe run away. But he did not. He just sat there, quiet and still. Across town, in a nearby high school, Malik's older sister, Amara, was walking through the halls when her friend shoved a phone in her face. "Isn't this your little brother?" the friend asked. Amara took the phone and watched the clip. She didn't blink. She didn't laugh. She watched it again. The second time, her jaw tightened. The third time, she walked straight to the principal's office without saying a word. She asked to leave early. That afternoon, she sat with Malik in their room at home. She didn't yell. She didn't ask him why he said it. She just sat beside him on the bed and held his hand. "Do you want to tell me about it?" she asked. Malik looked at her and said softly, "I wasn't lying." Amara squeezed his hand. She believed him. Later that night, Amara posted the full video on her own social media page with a message. She wrote, "My little brother said something true. His teacher didn't believe him. His classmates laughed. He got bullied, but he still told the truth. Watch how we treat black children when they speak." The video spread even faster this time. Now it wasn't just students watching. Parents saw it. Teachers saw it. Activists saw it. News people started asking questions. Some said, "This is what happens when a child is not listened to." Others said, "Why does everyone think a black boy can't have a powerful father?" And some said, "Maybe he was lying. But even if he was, that teacher had no right to treat him like that." At school the next day, Mrs. Bellamy was not smiling. She was on her phone during recess, talking to someone in a low voice. Her face looked red and worried. The principal called Malik into the office to ask him questions. He asked if he was okay. He asked if he wanted to talk about his family. Malik just said, "I'm okay." That was all. Back in class, the mood had changed again. Some students now sat near Malik when before they had avoided him. A boy offered him part of his cookie. A girl passed him a drawing she made of a superhero with brown skin and a golden crown. Malik smiled at that just a little. But the change was not just inside the school. That same black car that had passed Malik's house the night before was now parked near the school gate. Inside were two people in dark suits. They watched the building closely. They talked quietly into tiny earpieces. They held clipboards, but they were not taking notes. Nobody noticed them. Not yet. Inside the car, one of the people pulled up a file with Malik's name on it. Another held a photo of Malik and smiled softly. "He really is his father's son," the woman said. The man nodded. "They'll find out soon enough." That night, Amara found a letter on the front porch. It was inside a black envelope with a gold seal. She opened it carefully. The words inside were short but powerful. It said, "Your son is being watched, but not for harm, for truth. He has more power than you know. Prepare for a visit." Amara showed it to their mother, who went quiet for a long time. Malik did not know about the letter. He just went to bed like always. But that night, before he closed his eyes, he whispered the same words he had said in class. "My dad is the president." And this time, the night seemed to whisper back, "We know." The day began with clouds rolling across the sky like slow waves in the ocean. The wind was gentle but steady, brushing the tree branches outside Cedar Hill Elementary. The school bell rang at its usual time, but something about the air felt different. Students walked through the hallways whispering more than usual. Teachers peeked out of classrooms. Even the lunch staff in the kitchen seemed to be speaking softer than normal. It was as if the school was waiting for something. Inside room 204, Mrs. Bellamy wore a plain gray sweater and didn't have on her usual bright necklace. Her hands were folded on the desk, and she stared at the clock as if counting the minutes. The students sat in their seats, pretending to work but really just watching the door every time it moved. Malik sat near the window. His pencil tapped slowly on his notebook. He was calm like always, but his eyes looked farther than the classroom walls. He watched the sky, searching it for something no one else could see. Halfway through the morning, the principal's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Teachers, please bring your students to the auditorium for a surprise assembly. Right now." "Thank you." The students buzzed with curiosity. An assembly with no warning? That never happened. Mrs. Bellamy stood up quickly, smoothing her skirt, and told the class to line up. She did not smile. She just led them quietly down the hallway, her heels clicking on the floor. The auditorium was already filling with students and staff. The big stage had a dark blue curtain pulled to the sides. A row of chairs sat behind a podium, but they were empty. Everyone looked around, wondering what this was all about. The principal stood near the stage with two other adults. One was a tall woman in a navy suit. The other was a man in sunglasses who looked like he could see everything at once. They stood with their hands behind their backs, not speaking, just watching. When the last class had entered and found their seats, the lights dimmed. The principal stepped up to the microphone. "Good morning, students and staff," he began. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled just a little. "Today we have a very special visitor. Someone who saw something from our school and wanted to speak with us all. Please give your full attention and your respect." There was a pause. Then the door at the side of the stage opened. The man who walked in did not wear a crown or a cape. He wore a dark suit, a simple tie, and calm shoes that did not make a sound on the wooden stage. But his presence filled the room like thunder without sound. His skin was deep brown, and his eyes were sharp and thoughtful. He walked with steady steps, stopping behind the podium and adjusting the microphone. The entire room was quiet, even the teachers. Malik's heart beat faster. He sat up straight. The man looked out over the sea of young faces. Then he began to speak. "My name is not important right now," he said. "But what I stand for is. I came here because I saw something that happened in this very school. A young boy stood up in class and told you who his father was. He spoke with truth. He spoke with pride. But instead of being heard, he was laughed at." The man's voice was calm, but every word struck like a drumbeat. "I came today not because I am angry. I came because I want to teach something. Something that I hope you carry with you for the rest of your lives. He stepped away from the podium and paced slowly in front of the stage. When a black child tells you something, believe them. When a child of any color speaks their truth, listen. But especially black children, who for so long have been taught that their voices do not matter, that their stories are too wild, too proud, too big to be true. Students looked down. Teachers shifted in their seats. Mrs. Bellamy stared straight ahead, her face pale. This boy, Malik, told the truth. He said, "My dad is the president." And he was right. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. All eyes turned to Malik. He sat frozen, unsure if he had heard correctly. The man looked right at him. "Not the president of this country," he said, smiling slightly, "but the president of something real, something powerful. I lead a global council that works to save the planet. I meet with presidents and kings. I help make laws that protect nature and help poor nations. That makes me a president. And yes, I am Malik's father." Gasps filled the room. Someone dropped a pencil. A few students clapped before the rest joined in. Malik stood up slowly. He did not raise his hands or shout. He just smiled, the kind of smile that comes after waiting a long time to be seen. The man motioned for Malik to come up to the stage. Malik walked calmly, just like he had that day in class. But this time, the room watched with respect. When Malik stood beside him, the man placed a hand gently on his son's shoulder. "This boy is brave. He told the truth when it was easier to stay quiet. And even when he was laughed at, he did not run. That takes courage." He turned back to the audience. "But this is not just about Malik. This is about how we treat each other, how we judge people before we listen. It is about how often we teach black children to stay small instead of letting them shine." The auditorium was silent. Even the teachers in the back had tears in their eyes. After a few more words, the man turned to Malik and whispered something no one else could hear. Malik nodded. Then they both walked off the stage together, hand in hand. The rest of the day moved slowly. Students talked in low voices. Some wrote letters to Malik, saying they were sorry. Others asked him questions, now curious to know more. Mrs. Bellamy did not return to the classroom that afternoon. Another teacher came in and said she had gone home early. She never said why. By the end of the day, news vans were parked outside the school. Reporters stood with microphones. Cameras pointed at the front doors. The story had now become something bigger than a classroom moment. That night, Malik and his family sat at the dinner table. His mother served soup. His sister poured juice. His father sat quietly, smiling with pride. "You were amazing," Amara said to Malik. "You didn't just tell the truth. You stood in it." Malik looked down, then looked up again. "I just said what was real." His father reached over and ruffled his hair. "And that is more powerful than anything," he said. "The truth is always stronger than a lie." Outside, the stars blinked softly in the night sky. The world was starting to change. And it all began with one boy who said 7 simple words. "My dad is the president." By the next morning, the story had grown too big to stay inside the school walls. It had spread beyond Cedar Hill Elementary and rolled across the city like a giant wave. People were talking about Malik everywhere. In coffee shops, in buses, in living rooms, on radio stations, on the morning news. At first, most people were just curious. They watched the video of the assembly. They listened to the speech given by the man who introduced himself only through his mission. Some thought it was a movie scene. Others thought it had to be made up. But it was real. Every word, every pause, every quiet moment when Malik stood tall beside his father. It all happened, and the world had noticed. At Cedar Hill, things were different again. There was a new feeling in the air. The students looked at Malik not with jokes or stares but with respect. Some gave him small notes folded into stars. Others offered him snacks or seats beside them. Even the teachers acted differently. They called on him more during lessons. They smiled more often. They listened more carefully when he spoke. But it was not just about him. Something else was happening. A shift. A change in the way people were thinking. In the teacher's lounge, the staff sat around their usual table. Cups of coffee sat half-finished. A newspaper was spread out on the table. On the front page was a photo of Malik and his father on the stage, side by side. One of the younger teachers leaned back in her chair and said, "I never realized how quickly we shut down children, especially black boys. We call it discipline. We call it structure. But sometimes it is just silence in disguise." Another teacher nodded slowly. "I keep thinking about how calm he was. He did not shout. He did not cry. He just stood there and told the truth. And we laughed." The room was quiet for a moment. Then the principal stepped in holding a clipboard. "I have received over 100 emails," he said. "Some are from parents. Some are from schools in other cities. They all want to talk about what happened here. Some want to apologize. Others want to learn from it." He looked at the faces around the table. "I think it is time we do more than just talk. I think we need to change." Meanwhile, in a neighborhood not too far away, a group of children were gathered in a small library. The librarian had just finished reading them a book about heroes from around the world. When she closed the book, one little girl raised her hand. "Can Malik be in a book too?" she asked. The librarian smiled and nodded. "Yes, he can. And maybe you can help me write it." In other schools across the city, teachers started asking new questions. Not just about spelling and numbers, but about how to listen better, how to believe children more, how to stop unfair treatment before it begins. A high school debate team chose a new topic for their next event. The title was "The Power of Being Heard." Their leader said, "If Malik had not spoken up, none of this would have happened. One voice can change the world." Back at Malik's school, something special was being planned. The art teacher, Mr. Jonah, was leading a project that would take over one entire wall near the playground. It would be a mural made by the students. Each grade would paint a different part. The theme was Voices That Matter. Malik was asked to help design the center of the mural. He spent several afternoons drawing at the back of the art room. His hands moved carefully across the paper. He drew a boy standing tall. Behind the boy was a shadow shaped like a lion. Around him were clouds of different colors, each filled with words like truth and courage and strength. When it was finished, the whole school came outside to watch the first part of the wall get painted. Malik dipped his brush in gold paint and made the first stroke. It shimmered in the sunlight. People clapped. Some wiped their eyes. Others just stood quietly, watching the wall come to life. That same week, a group of mothers from the community came together to form a circle. They met at the local church basement. Folding chairs made a big ring around the room. One mother stood in the center holding a candle. She said, "This is for every child who was ever told they were too much, too proud, too loud, too different. This candle is for them." Another mother added, "This story reminded me of my son. He stopped sharing his dreams because someone laughed. I will never let that happen again." And so the ripple grew. People began writing letters to Malik. Some were printed. Some were drawn in crayon. Some had poems. Others just said thank you. A teacher from another state wrote, "You made me a better listener." A child wrote, "I told my class that I want to be a space captain. Nobody laughed this time." An old man wrote, "I grew up in a time when our voices were not allowed. Thank you for speaking." And still Malik stayed the same. Quiet, thoughtful, kind. He never bragged. He never shouted. He just kept being who he had always been. One evening, his father sat with him on the porch as the sun went down. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked. Malik looked out at the trees. "I just told the truth." His father nodded. "Yes, but the truth carries weight. And sometimes that weight is what changes the world." Inside the house, Amara was writing something on her laptop. It was a letter to her school principal. She wanted to start a program where students could share stories from their lives. A space where truth was not just allowed but welcomed. She called it Voices Rise. In the days that followed, more schools joined. More murals were painted. More hearts opened. All from one sentence. All from one moment. All from one boy who stood and spoke. The sun rose slowly over the rooftops. It was the kind of morning that seemed ordinary but would be remembered forever. All across the city, People were waking up to something new. Not a holiday, not a parade, but something more powerful. Today was the day of the Unity Walk. The idea had started small. One child, one sentence, one voice, but it had grown bigger than anyone imagined. Now the entire city was preparing to walk together to honor truth, to honor courage, to honor Malik and every child who had ever been ignored, laughed at, or told to sit down when they tried to stand. Malik stood in front of the mirror that morning with a plain white shirt and clean blue jeans. His mother combed his hair gently. His sister adjusted the buttons. His father stood in the doorway and watched them with quiet pride. "You ready?" his sister asked with a soft smile. Malik nodded. They stepped outside into a street already filled with movement. Cars had been blocked off. Signs were hanging from light posts. Some read, "Let them be heard." Others said, "One voice can change everything." Families gathered on sidewalks. Teachers wore shirts with painted handprints. Children waved little flags with golden lions on them. The same lion Malik had drawn on the mural now appeared on posters, shirts, buttons, and even balloons. The city had never looked so alive. At the school playground, the giant wall mural was now complete. Malik's lion stood in the center, surrounded by faces of every color and every size. Beside the lion were Malik's words in big bold letters. "I told the truth." People stopped to take pictures. Some knelt down and touched the bottom of the wall like it was sacred. Then came the sound of drums. Not loud marching drums, but soft hand drums that made a rhythm like a heartbeat. It started with one group, then another joined in, and another, until the whole crowd moved in step. Malik stood at the front of the Unity Walk, holding a banner that read, "Truth walks with us." Beside him was his father. On his other side, Amara. His mother walked just behind, hands linked with two other parents. Behind them came the children, then the teachers, then the neighbors, then the elders who walked slowly but proudly. The walk moved through the heart of the city, past the grocery stores, past the library, past the corner barber shop. People came out of buildings to join. Some brought flowers. Some brought notebooks. Some just brought their presents. Every few blocks, someone would step forward and share a truth. One girl stepped up and said, "I was told I couldn't be a doctor because I talk too much, but I am going to be one." A boy said, "My uncle is in jail for something he didn't do. I miss him every day. I want to become a lawyer to help people like him." A teacher stepped out and said, "I used to think I knew everything, but Malik taught me that real teaching starts with listening." And the walk kept moving. There were no fireworks, no big stage, just people, just truth, just steps that said we are here and we are ready to be better. When they reached the city's open park, the group gathered in front of a small wooden platform. Malik was asked to say a few words. He climbed the steps slowly. His heart beat fast, but his hands were calm. The microphone stood waiting. The people grew quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop. Malik looked out at the crowd. So many eyes, so many faces, so many waiting to hear him. He took a breath. "I didn't know my words would go this far," he said. "I didn't say them to become famous. I said them because they were true. I said them because I believed I could. But when I said them, people laughed. They didn't believe me. They thought it was a joke." He paused. "But I kept telling the truth. And now I see that telling the truth is not small. It is big. It moves people. It makes people think. It makes people walk together. It makes people see things they did not see before." He looked down for a second, then up again. "There are kids like me everywhere. In every school. In every class. Kids who dream big. Kids who speak up. But when we laugh at them or ignore them or punish them for using their voices, we don't just hurt them. We hurt ourselves too. We miss out on what they could become." A single tear rolled down someone's cheek in the front row. "So today I just want to say thank you to everyone who walked, to everyone who listened, to everyone who finally believed me. And I want to say this to every kid who feels like nobody hears them." He leaned a little closer to the microphone. "Keep talking. Keep dreaming. Keep standing up. Because the world is listening now. The crowd erupted into cheers. Hands clapped. Flags waved. Children jumped up and down. Malik stepped back and smiled. It was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something new. In the weeks that followed, more schools started programs to protect and uplift children's voices. News outlets covered stories about children doing great things all around the country. City leaders invited young people to share their thoughts at town meetings. And Malik's mural became a place where people went to find courage. Teachers brought their students. Families brought their children. Some even left flowers and notes at the bottom. But for Malik, life returned to something simple. He still walked to school, still did his homework, still helped his mom clean the table. But there was a light in his eyes now, a glow that said something powerful had changed inside him. Not just because of what he said, but because the world finally listened. And now that the world had heard, it could never go back to silence. So to every child reading this, to every parent, to every teacher, to every person who wants to make a difference, let this story remind you, the smallest voice can echo the loudest truth, and one truth can light up the whole world. Book sparkles. If the story moved you, share it. If it opened your heart, tell someone. If it made you think, keep thinking. And if you believe every child should be heard, liked, and lifted up, then like this story and subscribe for more, because this is only the beginning.